For the first time in Mexico's 200-year history, a woman has been elected as the president. Claudia Sheinbaum, a climate scientist and former Mexico City mayor, is the projected winner after Sunday's election. Sheinbaum will also be Mexico's first Jewish president. The 61-year-old beat the opposition by roughly 30 points. She was, of course, the favored candidate and will replace outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Ryan Berg joins me now. He's the director of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much for being with me. Mexico is the U.S. largest trading partner. Migrant flows come through Mexico, and it's also the primary route for major narcotics into the U.S. How do you expect the new president will manage the relationship with the U.S. given those three important areas?
Well, thanks for having me on, John. Look, Claudia Sheinbaum promised to continue the fourth transformation policies of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. And so there's a certain element of policy that will not change in Mexico because she explicitly campaigned on continuity. However, I think it's difficult to find someone who is more frictious with the United States than Andrés Manuel. And so I do anticipate that the personality differences between Andrés Manuel López Obrador and Claudia Sheinbaum will mean that perhaps there are slightly fewer frictions between the United States and Mexico on some of these incredibly important issues like migration and security cooperation.
As you mentioned, Sheinbaum was picked by her predecessor, who was popular during his reign, but you and your colleagues also say that he oversaw, quote, the bloodiest presidential term in Mexican history. Explain what you mean.
Well, those are facts on the security front, John. So by about year 5 of a 6-year term, there were more homicides in terms of numbers than in the entire 6-year term of Andrés Manuel López Obrador's predecessor, Enrique Peña Nieto. Those are numbers from his own government. And so the security policy that he pursued under his 6 years was an unwise one. It was essentially a campaign slogan from his 2018 campaign, Hugs, Not Bullets, which was essentially focusing on the root causes of violence in Mexico as opposed to interdiction and going after cartels and the territorial control that they possess. And it's had very unfortunate consequences for Mexico and for Mexicans in the form of the most homicidal 6 years that we've seen in a Mexican president's history.
You've also written about democratic backsliding that is slowly happening in Mexico. Give me an example of that, and also how much of an issue is that for the country and for U.S. relations with Mexico?
Well, backsliding in Mexico, the U.S. southern neighbor, and as you mentioned in your intro, the most important trading partner that we have, is a fundamental interest of ours. We need a robust democracy in Mexico for Mexico to play the strategic partnership that we want it to play with the United States. So I just think it's important to say that at the outset. You're right, John. We put out a recent paper which showed that on 16 different measurements, AMLO has backslid on about 14 of them. There are things like the independence of regulatory institutions, judicial independence, stepping in areas where normally the president doesn't step in. For example, after he decided to dox a New York Times reporter and give public information away in a country where it's very violent and very dangerous to be a journalist, he literally said that the law does not apply to the president. The moral and political authority of the president is above the law. So there have been a number of very troubling incidents indeed in Mexico, and we sincerely hope that the next president takes a different path when it comes to the robustness of institutions and democracy concerns.
AMLO, the nickname for López Obrador. One last question about the new President Sheinbaum is a climate scientist, and Mexico benefits obviously from oil production. Any indication that her background will affect the energy sector in a way that's different from her predecessor or that might be notable?
This has been one of the most interesting areas of speculation, John, because she campaigned, again, explicitly on continuation of some of these so-called fourth transformation policies of López Obrador. Central to those policies are the upholding of the prime position of Pemex and CFE, big state-owned enterprises, in the oil sector and electricity provision sector. So I don't think we're going to see too much of a change there. Where she has shown some distinction from López Obrador is an interest in investing more in green energy at the same time as she's upholding some of these state-owned enterprises. So we might see a little bit of both, but we certainly won't see Mexico walking away from its fundamental support of these state champions.
Ryan Berg with the Centers for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much.